Thank you. Welcome back to the first session. My name is Choi Gang, Vice President of Asan. I'm very much honored and privileged to chair this session. So we will begin the bilateral relations between Korea and China. So we are going to speak about the review of the past 2 decades of relations, what kinds of achievements we have acquired, and what kinds of obstacles or challenges ahead of us. Rather than talking about all good things, I'd like to ask the speakers to speak about the factors which could promote or hinder the relations between the two countries. Whenever we have a conference like this, we always go for the good side, but I'd like to ask the questions about some concerns we can have, factors we have to be more focused on that. So each speaker will speak about 10 minutes and the discussant. We have 3 discussants. Each discussant can speak about 5 to 7 minutes. Because our program book has all bios of them, so none of them needs to be introduced by myself, but actually, for the sake of discussion, I'd like to spare more time for the discussion from the floor. You can take the questions from the floor. So we have 4 speakers, Professor Shulong from Tsinghua University, and also Professor Long from Renmin University, Professor Heungkyu from Sungshing Women's University, and Mr. Scott Snyder from the CFR, and also Kato Yoichi from Asahi Shimbun. And last minute change, because actually Dr. Kim Tae-ho was not able to speak on this panel, so actually the same family name pops up. That's Kim Han-gon from Asan Institute to substitute his position at the last minute. And last but least, we have Professor Wang Fan from China Foreign Affairs University. So without further ado, let me ask Professor Chu, you start.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank the Asan Institute offer me the opportunity. And I want to exactly follow the Chair suggestion, like focusing on how to improve, how to deep China-Korea relation from my view. And first, I see after 20 years, rapidly development of economic, social, political relations between ROK and China, we still have a very important weakness, size in our bilateral relations. So my presentation will focus on them and my suggestion how to improve the relationship. I think the first weakness is that we have strong economic social ties, might be strongest bilateral social and economic ties between any 2 countries in Asia and the world, including trade volume, investment, tourists, students, numbers. But after that, I think our strategic security relations are still weak. And in next 10 or 20 years, I'm not sure we can dramatically improve the strategic and security relations. First, we have some obstacle or third partner element. For China, we have North Korea. So I understand the Chinese government always think about North Korea when we want to have develop military security relation with South Korea. It's our concern. We must take it. And for South Korea, U.S. is always the factor when South Korea, I think, try to develop a security military strategic relation with China. So we have a third-party concern going to a long time. I think it is a reasonable concern. We should not criticize that. Second, between our 2 parts, because the decades of not engagement, not diplomatic relation, I see that there's no Chinese bias against South Korea in security strategic issues. China never takes South Korea as a security threat or problem or troublemaker. But so far, we hear a lot of South Korea scholars, experts, including those scholar experts working in governmental institutions, military defense institutions, still suggest that China is a threat to Korea now in the future. And it has a great concern about the Chinese rising China now in the future, and its implication to Koreans' security, Koreans' role in Asia. So I think that is a big trouble. When South Korea, a certain number of elite, I'm not sure leaders, officials, but at least in Seoul, in Shanghai, in Beijing, when we had a conference like this, that increasingly you see, constantly you see South Korea scholars, experts suggest China is still kind of threat to South Korea. To us, this is ridiculous. We don't think we are threat to. We do not think that South Korea is a threat. So that's a threat perception. I think it's the biggest obstacle to develop strategic relations between our two countries in the next 10 years. Or in other words, I should say, political security strategic relationship between our two countries still very much behind close economic and social relations after 20 years. That is a clear weakness. Second, we need to deepen our consultation on North Korea. Even we have some difference, but North Korea is the major concern by our two countries. We two countries have a biggest interest to dealing with North Korea. We are much more related to North Korea. So we need a greater consultation to reach greater mutual understanding about North Korea. Help North Korea, encourage them for positive change. Be tougher, be united, be consensus when North Korea engage trouble directions, including nuclear issues, missile issues, and provocative words and action threatening South Korea. So we need a more strategic dialogue, consultation between our two countries on this kind of threat to the regional peace and security. Third, I think next 10 or 20 years, we need to deepen our people-to-people relation, like Yaqing suggested earlier. Yes, we have close social ties, flights each week, tourists, students. But do you think we have a friendship between our two people, two societies? Now, today, I'm not sure. Because when you read the news media, internet of two countries, you don't see the warm feeling, warm relationship between peoples of the two countries. I think this is sad. This is bad. Since we have so close social, educational, culture, tourist relations, why we do not follow up with the close feeling, friend feeling between us? So we must address it, improve. In order to improve the people-to-people relations, I think we need to reduce over-sensitivity between our two countries, our history difference, our culture difference, our some even holidays or some something between us. We see that there are too much South Korean activity, over sensitivity over those issues. So we should have open-minded for them. Second, we should improve news media coverage and understanding on each other. Looks like there's a news media fighting between two countries, or internet fighting, attack, criticize each other. This is very destructive for people-to-people relation. So perhaps we need a more news media conference like this to exchange views, to improve their understanding about the other country. Third and last, I think we need to enhance academic capacity and exchange between our two societies. I think after close economic social ties in 20 years, after established diplomatic relations, academic capacity in each country is still quite low in our relationship. What I mean is, I think everybody now can figure how many think tanks, centers on Korean studies in Beijing, in China. How many of them are in Seoul, in whole Korea? I don't know in Seoul, in whole Korea. I know in Beijing, there are few. There are few real centers, institutions concentrating on Korean studies, understanding Korea. There are few experts, Korean experts in China. I think academic community on international studies in China and in South Korea are defined still are Western-centered institutions and approach, focus on U.S. and the Western country studies. There are still a weak capacity in South Korea, in China, on Asian studies. I'm not saying we should substitute that, but I'm saying we should have a balanced understanding. Asian is rising, we are rising, Korea, China, and we become much more important. The world intention very much shift, focus on Asian, but we Asians are still focusing on somebody else, not on ourselves. So we should building those academic capacity on Asian studies, on each other countries' studies, social studies. We cannot have a people-to-people deepen relation without fully correctly understanding each other's society. So I think those are the challenge we need to do if we have better relations in next 10 to 20 years between two countries, and academic institutions like Asan Institute or Tsinghua or others want to contribute it. Those are among those some important things we need to work hard. Is my time up? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Actually, this last point, raising the exchange of academic activities and capacity building between the academic institute, actually serves the purpose of this forum. But actually, I'd like to ask, when you come back to the question, I'd like to ask the role of the social media and mass media in two countries' relations. Because actually sometimes media exaggerates or deliver wrong information to the public and then form very awkward, inappropriate perception of each other. So maybe I'd like to answer that question when we come to the Q&A session. Now, Canrong.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tregang, and thanks for the invitation of Asan Institute. It's a great honor for me. In my personal opinion, if we're looking back to the past 2 decades, we have to recognize this fact. China-Korean relationship is a big success. When we established the diplomatic tie in 1992, nobody can imagine what we achieved today, right? So that's a very clear fact. But in this process, we also see the fluctuation. 2010, 2011, after Chang'an and Yanping, the relationship got soured because China's attitude not satisfied with the public in Korea. But fortunately, this year the relationship got dramatically improved by 4 reasons. One is that China's policy towards DPRK changed significantly. China very clear put the denuclearization as the first priority. That make our stance closer to that of ROK. So that's first reason. Second reason is that the public here, and I believe the perception of President Park is very positive among Chinese public. and among Chinese leaders. So that's very helpful. And the third reason is that Abe-san helped ROK China get closer, right? And the fourth one is that economic tie, because the demand from either Europe and the United States not that strong, and force us to get closer. So based on these four factors, we now the situation much better than 2 years ago. So that perhaps that's why we have so many gatherings in this year. Looking into the future, I think there are several reasons will help us to remain together. One is economic tie. I tend to believe in the coming 10 years, the economy in Europe and in the United States will keep weak. Actually, I just got back from United States very late night of Sunday. And I talked with people in Berkeley and Goldman Sachs. And I see the big problem in the States. That is the financial sector is too strong. They get money away from manufacturing industry. So that's a big problem. And I don't see serious effort to change that situation. Very young people in Wall Street can easily get paid over $1 million a year. That's no good, right? And no money go to the manufacturing sector. So I do see, I do think United States need reform and open door. But nobody consider that. People just consider we have some problem in policy. Policy change, no problem. That's wrong. The states do need a reform. Under this background, no strong demand from Europe and the United States, that will force our Asian people to explore our own demand. So economic tie will be strengthened. That's one thing. Second, I think North Korean will be still a problem ahead of us. And force China and Seoul to work together. And Japan also. I think Japan needs at least 10 years to readjust their collective mentality. The big problem of the Japanese side is that in the past 1.5 centuries, Japan did very good job in modernize herself. Right? As the later come of modernization, Japan did very good job. Not only #1 among Asian community, but among all 170 non-West countries. But there comes a problem. Based on the success of industrialization, Japan surpassed Korea and China. And then comes the problem. The public in Japan consider that's something permanent. That's wrong. You know, the advantage of industrialization can be overcome by learning process. And actually, after the Second World War, either Korea and China start to learn. And as soon as we start to learn, we catch up. This industrial gap is not a problem of possibility, just a problem of time. You know, we can catch up by learning process. And actually, that happened now. You know, so the advantage of Japan based on the success of industrialization basically is a temporary phenomenon. But the public in Japan believe that's a permanent phenomenon. That's wrong. And for some Japanese people, based on this wrong perception, they grew up a kind of racist. That's the origin of the problem between Japan and Korea, between Japan and China. And I think we need 10 years to let Japanese public to realize that's something wrong. You know, they have to accept a new reality. That is, all the three countries will be equal. in industrialization, you know. But as I said, in at least 10 years to let Japanese people to readjust their mentality. And that will force Korea and China to work together. And the fourth possible cooperation field is that China determined to establish a new type of big power relations with the United States to escape the traditional tragedy of big powers. And I see some positive response from the United States, right? So that's good. And in this process, I think Korea can play some positive role because Korea is a very few country enjoying good relationship with both countries, right? China and the United States. 2 years ago, when I traveled to Israel, many Israeli leaders said one advantage of Israel is that they share good relationship both with Washington and Beijing, so they can be the bridge of these two countries. And I think Seoul can play the same role. As for the problem, I think one problem is that both countries are very confident, sometimes overconfident. Many Chinese believe in the coming 10 years, China will surpass the United States. That's something inevitable. So China will be the next superpower. So that made Chinese people very confident. And on Korean side, I think Korean did very good job as a medium power. Right, among OECD countries, the annual growth of GDP in the past decade, Korean ranking #1. So compared with other medium power, Korean just like a medium star, as a film star, right? And I noticed that Korean decided to establish a coalition of medium powers, right? So on Korean side, they're also growing confidence. And sometimes confidence is good, sometimes leads to problem. So that's one thing. And combined with what Dr. Choi Kang mentioned, the mass media, the role of mass media. The mass media in Korea is very independent, and also very nationalist oriented. Right? And China now also owns media freedom. China's media freedom not result from democratization, but driven by marketization, and also quite nationalist oriented. So that will lead to problem. And the third obstacle is DPRK policy. I noticed Professor Shulong mentioned, as for DPRK policy, on one side we share some commonality, but on the other side we do have differences. Right? And so my suggestion is that, if possible, we should reach something in economic side, let's say FTA, China-Korean FTA, as soon as possible. And then invite our Japanese friend in. And if we can have a trilateral FTA, that will be a great benefit to the regional stability. And except more economic tie, I agree with Shulong, we should try to help the two society to get together, get closer. And finally, we should work together on those so-called transnational issues or global issues. Let's say the disaster relief, food security, etc. So personally, I build very optimistic perception about the future of ROK-China relations. Stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chanlong. At your last point about transnational issues, actually the South Korean government under the Park Geun-hye leadership put forward the Northeast Asia Peace and Cooperation Initiative, which actually is designed to deal with such issues as climate change or HADR. So I'd like to have your thought on this. the perspective on the Northeast Asian Peace and Cooperation Initiative. What kinds of things we can do together, what kinds of added value we can think of. And now I'd like to ask Professor Kim Heungkyu for your comments.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation. And then let me briefly introduce my own personal understanding of the President Park's China policy and its implication and my own suggestions. First of all, after a series of debates in Korea, Park government adopted a kind of policy of materialization of the strategic cooperative partnership with China. And then also it was reported that the Park government will pursue the so-called allying with the United States and harmonizing with China strategy. In Chinese, 联美合中. And also the South Korea regards China as a strategic partner in trust politics in dealing with North Korea nuclear issues as well as the North Korea issues itself. And also South Korea regards China as the strategic neighbor in the ideas of the establishment of the peace in Northeast Asia. And then also South Korea hoped to establish a kind of trilateral strategic dialogues among the South Korea and the United States and China. And South Korea also see the China as an objective of the middle power foreign policy. And as a result, we witnessed initial honeymoon period between South Korea and China under the Park and Xi's leadership. Both countries exchanged very special envoys, respectively, right after Lady Park won the Korean presidential election, and then they held successful summit in June 2013, in which favorite impression on both countries has been elevated. If we see and also we witness both countries cooperate each other in dealing with North Korea's third nuclear test, and also we had a kind of agreement to establish strategic consultation and cooperation between the highest level of leaders in dealing with the security issues as well as the foreign affairs issues. By 2015, we will reach kind of $300 billion of level of the trading, and then also in spite of the bumpy relationship, and these days still we have we are extending various areas of the cooperation between the two countries. So I pay very special attention to the recent Chinese announcement on their neighbor foreign policies, especially in particularly being a comfortable neighbor, as well as making the neighbors prosperous and also having friendly relationship with neighboring countries. This is a very good sign for the relationship between the South Korea and China. However, there are still several obstacles between these two countries. First of all, there is a kind of a difference and also the kind of challenge in China-North Korea special relations versus South Korea and the U.S. alliance. North Korea has been quite successful of cultivating the priority difference of South Korea and China, engulfing the schism and forming a new corridor-like security environment in Northeast Asia, under which North Korea can harvest the fruits most. And also there is the difference in dealing with North Korea nuclear issues. South Korea regarded as a kind of imminent threat to its security and very existence. China seems to see as a little imminent, less imminent threat. And third issue is the issue of harmonizing the U.S. alliance with the strategic cooperative partnership with China, maybe in the long run. And also the imminent issue is the South Korea's introduction of the missile defense system. Currently, South Korea strengthened its middle power foreign policy, and then it will strengthen this kind of orientation in the future. South Korea's Prime Minister Yoon Byung-se joined the MICTA Mexico, Indonesia, South Korea, Turkey, Australia, this kind of middle power cooperative mechanism on September 26th in the UN General Assembly meetings. There are several functions of the middle powers. First of all, first one is the, to initiate, promote cooperation in the region. And the second one is mitigate tension and conflicts. Third one is the, mediate disputes. And the fourth one is the secure common interest. South Korean foreign policy will, as I mentioned, strengthen the middle power foreign policy in the future. And given the circumstance, South Korea's China policy orientations may vary from the allying with the United States and communicating with China, the so-called Renmin Tongzhong, and to allying with the United States and harmonizing with China, Renmin Hezhong, to allying with the United States and cooperating with China, Renmin Xiezhong, and consulting with the United States and China in the long run, the Renmin Lianzhong, in this kind of line. Park Geun-hye's government's China policy seems to stay in between and to allying with the United States and harmonizing with China, Renmin Hezhong, and allying with the United States and cooperating with China, Renmin Xiezhong, which is much earlier than I anticipated. It is not desirable that South Korea takes a single-minded, one-side policy between the United States and China, which is the zero-sum nature for the stability and peace in the region. Under the threat of North Korean nuclear weapons and military provocation, South Korea and United States alliance must be the pillar for the South Korean security architecture for the next coming decades. And then also, we appreciate the role of outbound balancer and the mitigator of the United States in this region. However, given the rise of China and then also the close neighbor, South Korea foreign policy should be much more complicated and multi-dimensional and seeking cooperation more with China. South Korea must work with China to harvest fruit from the Chinese economic development and to promote further cooperation on North Korea and to maintain peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula as well as in the region. As a middle power, South Korea cannot play a balancing role in this region. And we are fully aware that it will be difficult to achieve stability, prosperity, and peace for the South Korea alone. However, South Korea may have a bridging role, as I mentioned, as a middle power functions, by promoting further cooperation and initiating new cooperative mechanisms in this region and seeking to mitigate tension among great powers in this region. South Korea will definitely strengthen its middle power cooperative mechanism in this region. Middle powers in this region face a similar international milieu and can promote common interests through establishing such a middle power cooperative mechanism. My policy suggestions for the South Korea and China, there are three. First one is we need to design the high level of strategic dialogues installed with a practical mechanism to enable all the critical issues discussed and coordinated. Second one is we need to establish a kind of research committee for crisis prevention and management mechanism. And my last suggestion is that we have to resolve the difference of the jurisdictional demarcation in the South Sea of China, including Suyenjiao and in Korean, Yeodo, during the Park and Sea era. Otherwise, we'll face very difficult times for the rest of this century. So this is the kind of very important issues, even though it is very difficult to mention in the public. So under the table, I hope the both governments are capable of dealing with this kind of issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kim. I have just two questions. One, when you say the harmonizing with China, so can you be more specific? What you mean by the harmonizing with China? Second, there have been lots of strategic dialogues between the two countries here in Beijing or in Seoul. what are the problems with those dialogues? So why are you suggesting new strategic dialogue between the two? So what kinds of more specific recommendation you can make to improve or make the strategic dialogue real meaningful one? Those two questions. Okay. Now I'd like to have Scott for your comments, the third country's comments on this bilateral relationship. Scott?
Okay. Well, thanks, Kang, and thanks to Asan Institute for inviting me to be here. So far, this has been really fascinating to see a Korean research institution co-hosting a meeting here in Beijing. And I feel privileged as a third-party scholar who's been watching this relationship to be able to participate in this meeting. It's absolutely right that I'm a third-party observer, and so I feel like I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage. But I have been studying this relationship closely, and in fact wrote a book about China's rise in the two Koreas. I think that the video that we saw at the very beginning really showed something that is significant, and that is that there really is no more significant transformation in a bilateral relationship in Northeast Asia than the one that has occurred over the course of the past 2 decades between South Korea and China. And so I think that's important to recognize. I think the other thing the video showed is that this is an ancient relationship, but it's also new. I mean, the relationship between South Korea and China, as is acknowledged by the subtitle for the conference, is only 20 years old. And yet these are countries that are getting to know each other after 4 decades of a break in relations, really. And of course, the reason for that is North Korea. And so I think that the other aspect that I see is that we really have to take into account North Korea as we look at the China-Korea relationship. So I wanted to quickly try to do 3 things. One is to talk about the relationship between geoeconomics and geopolitiks, really extending on the keynote remarks that were made. 2 is to name 3 factors to watch in the relationship. And thirdly, to talk about the relationship between the U.S.-Korea alliance and the future development of the Korea-China relationship. And so, you know, the relationship between geoeconomics and geopolitics. I think it's very clear that for China, the relationship with North Korea is still being driven very much by geopolitics. Actually, it's a transition from a shared ideological relationship to one that is now driven by geopolitics. And one of the challenges related to that is that it means that when China looks at North Korea and looks at the Korean Peninsula, it also thinks about the United States. And so I just want to put that out on the table as actually one of the big obstacles that China faces as it tries to develop a strong relationship with the Korean Peninsula. But the China-South Korea relationship has really been driven by geoeconomics. And we have seen remarkable transformation in that relationship. The problem is that I think the development of the economic relationship in a way is capped by the fact that China prioritizes geopolitics. And that means that North Korea and the U.S.-Korea alliance are the major issues that in effect serve as a brake on the development of the political and security side of the relationship that has already been referred to. And so this is going to be, I think, where the rubber meets the road in terms of how the China-South Korea relationship develops going forward. Can China and South Korea come to a clearer understanding on North Korea and on the role of the alliance in the region? 3 factors to watch in the Korea-China relationship. First, I think, is underlying this remarkable growth in the economic relationship between South Korea and China has also been the fact that up to now, South Korea has been a kind of mentor in the late industrialization game. And one of the factors that we can see related to that is that there's a big trade surplus between South Korea and China. Going forward, I think a major challenge for the South Korea-China relationship will be how both countries deal with the possibility that that surplus might change into a deficit as China continues to modernize. It will change, I think, the way that South Koreans look at China, and it could change the way that China interacts with South Korea. Second, the challenge related to the potential for instability in North Korea is an issue that could bring Chinese and South Korean differences over the desired end state on the Korean Peninsula and over the possibility of unification to the fore. If there's instability in North Korea, there will be an even greater demand for and need for understanding between China and South Korea. And so that's really what I think all of the talk about the importance of improving strategic communication between China and South Korea really has to be about. And then the third factor is related to the sustainability of the US-Korea alliance beyond North Korea. And I think that this is going to be very interesting to see how it develops as an issue in the relationship between Korea and the United States and between Korea and China. But ultimately, it involves a strategic decision that the leaders of a unified Korea will have to make as it tries to sort out its place between the US and China. And then the third thing I really want to do is to say something about why, in my view, the US-South Korea alliance need not inhibit a closer South Korea-China relationship. Because I think that there is a view out there that I've heard, especially in South Korea, that maybe the US might view this as a zero-sum game. Over the course of the past year, I was engaged in a lot of conversations with South Korean colleagues about whether or not the US would view a closer South Korea-China relationship as a negative. And I think that there are 5 reasons why there should not be any problem on the US side with this development of a closer South Korea-China relationship. The first one is that I think the US and South Korean strategic approaches to China's rise are parallel and converging. They're both concerned with trying to manage or avoid strategic competition while also focusing on engagement and hedging. And so there I think that the US and South Korean approaches to China actually are very much parallel with each other. Second, the main rationale for the US-South Korea alliance has been threat-based, focused on deterrence of North Korea. But I think that over the course of the past decade, there has also emerged a very strong values-based rationale for the alliance, which basically means that there are a lot of things that the US and South Korea want to do and can do together that are not directed at an external threat. But I see in the Chinese understanding of alliances a viewpoint that alliances can only be justified by an external threat. I think we've already heard some comments to that effect even today. And so I would like to challenge that because I, in fact, think that that may not be the case. The third point is that really South Korea, as far as issues related to China's rise for the US, can be seen as the canary in the coal mine, as kind of the test of how Chinese strategic intentions are developing. And actually, South Korea has much more to lose than the US from risks related to engagement with China. So in fact, there's no reason why the US would stand in the way of that engagement because South Korea's risk tolerance should be much more refined than that of the US as it relates to the issues that South Korea is concerned about. The fourth one, I just want to say that I think that the Northeast Asia Peace and Cooperation Initiative provides a vision for institutionalized multilateralism that I think that the US should be actively supporting because it's win-win and because it brings potentially the US and China together. And so in my view, the vision is a classic case of how quote-unquote middle power role can be played out. The challenge, of course, is in implementation, and there are many issues that have to be dealt with in that context. And the last reason why I think that the US should not be concerned about closer South Korea-China relations is that and one reason why I think the Chinese side should actually not be too critical of the U.S.-Korea alliance is I think that if there were no alliance between the U.S. and South Korea, in fact, we would see different forms of hedging by South Korea to cope with the size differential between China and South Korea. And some of those forms of hedging may be less desirable from a Chinese point of view than the forms of hedging represented in the U.S.-Korea alliance. And so I'll stop there, hopefully, with a provocative comment that will elicit further discussion.
Thank you, Scott, for raising some very important issues about, especially on this instability of North Korea. Actually, that's the area to be discussed, and also what should be the format or level of involvement of discussion between the concerned parties. I think that could be one of the major items to be discussed between Korea, Japan, Korea, U.S. and China as well. So I think that's and that one. But this U.S. alliance beyond the Korean Peninsula, I wonder what would be the Washington mood if the unification is realized, and then on the alliance, whether U.S. will still maintain the same level or same structure of U.S. forces in Korea, or maybe the capital might have different understanding of the alliance once unification is achieved. So maybe that's too far, but anyway, we should be more well prepared for that kind of situation. So I'd like to ask that one. Okay, now I'd like to invite Kato Yoichi for your comments, as well as your own understanding of bilateral relations of Korea and China.
Well, first, I'd like to thank very much Asan Institute for not excluding Japan from this forum. And seriously, I think it is really meaningful to have Japan and the United States in this setting. And so I really would like to first extend enormous respect and appreciation to Asan Institute for making this possible. And I'd like to say two things from Japan's point of view. Since I'm the first Japanese speaker in this entire conference, I'd like to give you a broader perspective what the significance of ROK-China deepening relations means to Japan. First of all, the stable, good relationship between China and Korea is really crucial for Japan. It is really necessary. It serves the interest of Japan for China and Korea to develop a stable and strong relationship. If you go back into the history a little bit, if I may, there was a time, actually it was the 7th century, that China attacked Korea. And at that time, China was a Tang dynasty, and Korea was divided into 3 countries, Baekje, Silla, and Goguryeo. And there was a war started between Tang and Baekje, and Baekje asked Japan to help. And actually, Japan dispatched enormous naval forces, actually 800 ships, much more than current Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force has. and Japan and Baekje joint force alliance fought famous naval battle, Baijiang-ko, Jijiang, the Battle of Baijiang-ko, and we lost to China. And what happened was, the reason why I'm talking about this is because after 9 years of this battle, Japanese rule of Tenno at that time, emperor, collapsed. And Japan went into the huge civil war because of this war. And so even 1,300 years ago, the power balance and struggle in the Korean Peninsula had a direct impact on Japan. And so you can imagine, how it is more so right now. And so it is, as I said, it's really important for Korea and China to develop a good relationship. But fast forward right now, it is also, second point, it is also a fact in Japan that there's a concern that Korea and China gets too close each other, that will be some problem for Japan. And there's a number of people in the defense community expresses this concern. And the reason is, but I think it's only natural that the Korea and China develop a closer relationship. Looking at, for example, the economic interdependence. Now, I think out of total trade that Korea has, I think 20% is between Korea and China, and it's more than the amount that Korea has with United States and Japan combined. So I think it's only natural that Korea develops that kind of a relationship. And as long as that economic interdependence is concerned, that's fine. But when it comes to political and strategic relationship, that would give Japan some concern. Because right now, I think the region is going through an enormous historic shift of leadership structure. And from uncontested U.S. primacy to contested U.S. primacy. And the question is where we are going from here. And Japan's strategy is based on helping United States to maintain this primacy. And if Korea's decision to develop a closer relationship with China changes this equation, Japan has to adjust a very basic strategy. And that makes the region, from Japan's point of view, more unpredictable. And if Japan sees more unpredictability in this region, Japan has to hedge more. Hedge against assertive China, hedge against weaker Korea, United States alliance, and that will eventually could also make much more trouble for Japan to maintain the alliance with the United States. And if that's the case, Japan has only two choices. One is to enhance the alliance with the United States and try to build up a stable basis for Japan's strategic calculation. And if Japan failed to build this kind of stronger alliance with the United States, Japan will be isolated. And if isolated Japan really come to happen, Japan may go, to stronger armed Japan. Of course, this is too simplistic a scenario, but that's something perhaps we all should keep in our mind. And the regional structure, power structure, will be, to put it simplistically, Japan, United States versus China, Korea. And of course, the United States would never want it, so I don't think it's going to happen. But this is, I think, will lead to destabilize the region. And the other choice Japan has is to develop a good relationship with Korea and China, and perhaps a good, stable, trilateral relationship. Then, even if there's still a rivalry, strategic rivalry between United States and China, and also even if Japan maintains an alliance relationship with the United States, I think the entire region can enjoy a more stable strategic balance. And so, of course, among those, between those two choices, there's no argument. Japan should take the latter one. So I strongly believe that Japan should really build up a good, strong relationship with Korea and China. And perhaps what we can do to start with is, enhance dialogue. I would talk about it more in my presentation in the afternoon. But for example, Japan, Korea 2+2, Japan, China 2+2, or trilateral 2+2. Japan just announced. Japan just decided to start a 2+2 with France after U.S., Great Britain, and Russia, and so that kind of comprehensive strategic dialogue would really help to prevent unintended misunderstanding or conflict and promote the regional stability. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to have Dr. Kim Ang-won, South Korean perspective.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm very happy to be here and I'm honored I can present here on behalf of respected Congressman Kim Tae-ho. I always talk about the South Korea and China's relationship must be developed, and we can develop, promoted the bilateral relations with our own efforts. Now we know that we have good relations in terms of economy and social cultural exchanges, but still we have matters and conflict ideas in terms of security issues. We understand this situation. South Korean government defined it as Asian paradox. Why the economic relations and social cultural development cannot be make a spillover effect to the security issues, and we have to challenge it to the next 20 years between the two countries. I'd like to make one point that we have to more focusing on understand and trust between the two countries. In my understanding, we just emphasized understanding and trust, but we just, I feel it is an echo in vain between the two countries. First of all, I'd like to talk about understanding. Many Korean people, if we ask, do you know about China? They said they know. We know about China very well. We know each other more than 1,000 years. But what South Korean people understand China is the ancient China, Song dynasty, Ming dynasty, and Qing dynasty. They don't know how the new China is different from the pre-modern Chinese dynasty. The same question, if I ask the Chinese people, probably we can see the very similar trends. For example, let me introduce one episode. Dr. Jung Mong-jun this morning, he introduced one bestseller in South Korea. This novel introduced one episode that young South Korean men and young ladies, very beautiful ladies, Chinese, from China, they want to get married. But the father of the woman, the ladies, objected to this marriage because he said, our family are going to hurt our means, losing faces, because he's from our former tributary country. That means it is a very extremely examples, and it is not our problems, the intellectual leaders. We don't have this problem. But I'd like to point out our laziness to make effort to really understand our two countries' peoples. The second one is about trust issues. We understand what really want to opposite party. But we really tried to understand why they asked us to do this. The best example is North Korean issues between the two countries. We have to promote our trust on strategic cooperation. At the same time, trust on durability of policy toward two countries, as well as toward North Korea. Frankly, I understand China's concern that South Korean government, after 5 years, very unpredictable, due to depending on the characteristic of the administration, new president, any time can change their South Korean policy toward China, toward North Korea. So we have accumulated policy trust between the two countries. In this case, China's direction of the foreign policy toward South Korea and North Korea will be predictable. They rarely change their policy direction unless they face the earthquaking structural changes. So my proposition is that I'd like to ask the congressional leaders in these forums. We just focused on government-to-government trust building process. But this time, I'd like to point out the more focus on the trust between legislative bodies between the two countries, like Korean National Assembly and Lonta NPC, as well as the CPPCC Zhengxie.
Thank you, Dr. Kim.
Yes.
For the sake of the discussion, I'd like to ask the panelists to be as brief as possible. So, Professor Wang, you have 5 minutes.
All right, I'm sorry. Okay. So my suggestion is that we have to, not just government to government, we have to promote the trust between the registered bodies. That can be more stable understanding between the two countries and maintain policy durability between the two countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Wang.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank the Asan Institute for inviting 3 Chinese scholars in first session to talk about Sino-ROK relations. I think I realized that China is really important for this bilateral relationship. In general, I think it's right time to both of us to develop our relationship and promote our relationship to a high level. My reason is that, first of all, I think there are several bilateral relations is really good. Sino-ROK relation is good. Sino-DPRK relation now has been normalized from special relations. Sino-US relation is really good in general. So this is a virtuous circle, but not vicious circle. So and from 2004, Sino and ROK economic relation and the economic interdependence has been developed very to the very high level. So China has become the biggest economic partner to South Korea. So remark of China is really important to South Korean economy. So both of our leaders pay much attention to Sino-US relation from Sino-ROK relation from strategic level. So the thesis the question we have to face is that first of all, that is under the current security framework, that is under the ROK-US alliance, the condition, how to develop Sino-ROK security relation. This is a new topic. I think in general, we think this kind of two security ties could be coexistent, but how to develop the Sino-ROK security relation? This is the first question we have to face. Second question is that I think how China and the ROK cooperate further to deal with denuclearization of a Korean peninsula. This is a second important question. So my suggestion is that we need to abide by three principles. First of all, I think we need to coordinate state resolution and permanent resolution. So for Sino and ROK relation, we should not just focus on the issue problem. We need to focus on the long-term strategic issue. We need to focus on the long-term security mechanism build-up. So my suggestion is that I think the trust-building process could cooperate with the six-party talks mechanism. The second principle I think we need to abide by is that process dominate. So everyone knows one reason could bring about several results. So we need to focus on the process. We need to focus on the good result. And also we need to notice interaction. So interaction is the most important thing in this region. We shouldn't just blame one side. We need to, both of us, we need to notice and pay attention to the reaction of the other side. The third principle is that I think we need to coordinate multilateral constraint and self-constraint. So in this region, no one country could control or could constrain others. So we need a multilateral constraint, and we need to emphasize self-constraint. So anyway, I think we need new thinking and a new concept. If we just make out the policy without new concept, so nothing could be resolved. So this is 4 points. Second point, I think we even talk about the Korean Peninsula security. When we talk about the Sino-RK relation, we need to emphasize the regional issue. The third one is that everything is changeable. Everything is keeping changeable. So something it seems could not happen, might happen. So we need to pay attention to the low probability. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wang. Now, I'd like to open the floor for the questions from the floor, and then I will ask the panelists to respond to those questions. Now, floor is open. Mr. Nam?
Hi, my name is Chung Ho Nam. I'm working for 중앙일보, the Korean newspaper. And I have a question to Professor Chin regarding trade system regime in this area. And I think so you may know that the trade system called TPP, which is led by United States. Are you familiar with TPP? Yeah. So in the past, the Korean government say that, and they don't like to join the TPP because it doesn't look like attractive in many reasons. But recently, Korean government changed its stance, and they said they will join in the meantime. So, but some Korean media, say that this is not a good thing because there's a danger to isolate the China.
Thank you.
So what do you think of the change of Korean government policy toward TPP? That's my question.
Thank you. And then? Okay.
我想这个问几个问题。第一个是金星圭教授，您说是应该联美合中，我想这个想法有它的积极意义。但是我就想问你，你们如何来协调与美国同盟关系和对中国的战略伙伴关系？第二个，对加藤洋一先生，我想问。 刚才您说，日本如果不加强同美国的同盟关系，就要孤立了。我不知道为什么你不一边加强，能不能再和别的国家加强关系呢？为什么加强不了的？第三个，我想和金灿荣教授协商一个事情。您说是中国最近改变了对朝政策，我想这个词用的是不是重了一点儿？我不认为已经改变了，只能说中国对朝鲜的核试加强了制裁的力度。 因为中国对朝鲜改变政策的话，它包括的方面很多。首先，现在中朝友好合作条约就没有变化嘛，是吧？那么对它有些事情它做过头了，我们做一个联合国理事国，我们应该参与联合国对它的制裁。那么就这一件事情，你说中国改变了对朝政策，我想我不太同意您的看法。谢谢。
Thank you. And then.
Hi, Jennifer Lynn from Dartmouth College. Scott Snyder in his talk brought up the issue of U.S. ROK alliance and regional structure in a post-North Korean world. And this is obviously a fascinating thing to think about and a very important conversation to have amongst all the countries represented here. I wanted to talk about a time period short of that, though, which is obviously, we're going to experience, if this ever happens, a transition period. And in my own research, I've looked at that transition period, and have gotten very afraid of the instability that could result in such a period. And so when we're talking about China-Korea cooperation, I very deeply hope that there is some sort of cooperation going on this topic, because this is a period fraught with such danger and instability for the region and potential huge loss of life in North Korea. So I'm wondering if any of you could comment on any cooperation that is currently happening or might be possible at track 2 or track 1 or at any level between China and South Korea. Thank you.
I have 2 more people on my list, Professor Chongmin Lee and then Minister Han Seung-ju. Chongmin.
Thank you, Gang. I have one question for our Chinese participants, either Professor Chu Shulong or Canrong. First of all, what I want to know is, in your opinion, who is the most prominent Japan watcher in China? Is it the PLA? Is it the party? Is it the academia? Who would you go to say that this is the authoritative view on Japanese policy, whether it's foreign policy or military policy? And I wanted to ask Kato-san. Recently, the Choson Ilbo, I think it was yesterday, had an editorial. It emphasized that Japan is going to have a new National Security Council, and the Chinese are also going to consider a similar type of apparatus. So from your perspective, why are the Japanese thinking about having a National Security Council much like the U.S. system? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister Han. Mike.
I want to ask Mr. Kato Yoichi a question about the choice that he mentioned. I'm just wondering, of the 2 choices, what makes it difficult, if not impossible, to choose both? That is, have strong alliance with the United States and have good relations with Japan's neighbors. Why does it have to be a choice? And a related question is, if it has to be a choice, what is the view, general view in Japan? Where would the Japanese public at large would go? How the choices should be made?
Now, I'd like to ask my panelists to respond to questions and also the questions that I pose upon you.
Okay. First,
very brief. Okay?
Oh, yes. Okay, I think first you call me, the question is about news media. I think the observation news media in 2 countries has been negative, basically, towards each other, and has a very negative influence among general public. I think part of the problem is the nature of news media. They focus on negative issues. They do not like to report the positive issues. Second, is I think because the misunderstanding. Like Dr. Kim said that many Koreans assume they understand China. Many of us here assume we understand Korea, especially North Korea. But in fact, we do not understand too much, if at all, about North Korea. So I think that's a misunderstanding or lack of understanding causes some negative attitude. I think one of the ways to improve it is to improve the understanding, the knowledge about each other, the real story, correct understanding. 2 other questions. So far as I know, there are little discussion on track 1 or track 2 between ROK and China about North Korea. I think we should keep that way. I don't think ROK and China getting together, people, no matter track 1, track 2, we should talk too much about the US or Japan. It would get much more complicated relations or security situation in Northeast Asia if we do so. I think North Korea bilateral relations are good enough agenda for us to engage a dialogue. North Korea issues is always a headache issue for us. And the related issues, position US, Korea, Japan, China, Russia, how to deal with North Korea. And the bilateral cooperation, including cultural friendship. I think we have 4 agenda to improve our bilateral dialogue relation now in future, and without talking too much about the US and the. And the third, if we do think about US, I think key question is, as a question asked about the Jing earlier, the key issue, fundamental issue, whether we should see US as a stabilizer in East Asia. I think if we have that consensus, then we'll be much more constructive. Last one, no. Yes.
Yes, I think that's it.
Okay,
Canrong,
okay,
you have
okay,
questions on this North Korea policy, TPP?
I would like to respond to your question first. During President Park's trip to Beijing, our leaders gave a very positive response to her
Northeast Asia.
Yeah, Northeast Asia confidence building initiative. So, principally speaking, we support that, but we want to know the details, not just the idea. So when details get clear, then China's stance will be more clear.
Okay.
And as for TPP, used to be China very hesitate. There's some alertiveness actually, because people here consider TPP is part of rebalancing, part of pivot, part of coming back. But gradually, I think people here, the elites here, believe from long-term viewpoint, TPP is in accordance with China's interests. The current leader, I think, bear the same philosophy of our previous leader, Jiang Zemin and Zhu Rongji. At that time, Premier Zhu said we need some pressure from outside world, to push reform further by open the door wider. So that's why we joined the WTO. After the entry of WTO, within China, we either give up or significantly changed 700 laws. And now the current leader believe we need to do the same thing. And TPP perhaps can help us. So that's why in the SNED of July this year, China accept the US norms, right, to negotiate on BIT, Bilateral Investment Treaty. And as I know, if China accept the US norms and sign the BIT, that means China has to either give up or significantly change 500 laws within China. So equal to the second round of entry of WTO, very significant. So to some extent, China now become much more positive towards TPP. And then comes the problem of the United States. As I know, during the Snyder Park summit, our side show our interest to join TPP, but get no response from the United States. So that's a problem. Whether the United States is a 叶公好龙, you know the old saying of China, right? 叶公好龙 or not, we have to see. Okay. And finally, as for whether China's policy towards DPRK changed or not, I think strategically speaking, we remain the same. The treaty is still there. But at tactical level, I do see big change. I think many people really annoyed by their behavior. And I think North Korea has some miscalculation on the policy of new leaders.
Thank you.
I'll stop here.
Okay, and then.
Okay, I have 3 questions. First of all, how to interpret the Renmin strategies. I can summarize the essence in Chinese enough. 交通那个所以 means the seeking common grounds and reducing the differences. Okay. Generally speaking, we are not familiar with dealing with the differences and conflicts between South Korea and China. So our policy was seeking common grounds and leaving the difference behind. But when we appreciate strategic importance on the Park and Sea period, we have to positively and actively reduce the difference. We have to work on that. Otherwise, we will face much more difficulties in the future. So this is what I meant. The second question is strategic dialogues. Yes, as far as I know, under the Nomuhyun government and the Lee Myung-bak government, both countries had a kind of strategic dialogues, but they were not institutionalized, and also they just assumed to be a kind of track 2 dialogue. So we were not sure whether we have a kind of a direct report to the highest level of government leader and about the outcome and or result. But under the Park Geun-hye government and the Xi Jinping's leadership, we institutionalized the kind of highest level of strategic dialogue between the Blue House and then also the highest level of Chinese security and foreign affairs institutions. And also this is a kind of a guarantee for the both governments to have a kind of connection, to have a kind of source to directly report to the highest leader. Okay, so this is very important. So, but to materialize this kind of new institutions, we have to arrange a kind of a practical mechanism. We have already, both of countries already have a high level of dialogues between the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of Defense. So if we add one more thing, it's not really meaningful. So we have to have a mechanism to to be able to talk all kind of issues in the between these two countries and much more flexible. And then so I suggest 1.6 level of dialogue we need. As a sub mechanism. It means not exactly in between, but maybe a little bit more civilian oriented. Then we can be much more flexible. So I create a new term, 1.6 level of dialogue we needed.
Okay, thank you. The 1.6.
Just
okay.
1 minute,
30
please.
seconds.
Please. Okay, thank you. The relationship between the United States and China is not it's a kind of long-term process. So we have to face that kind of situations. So I question again to my Chinese colleagues, if South Korea abandoned ROC-US alliance, is it beneficial for China now? This is a really key question. And so maybe in the long-term process of the US-China rivalries and also the complication of the cooperation competition, I think South Korea can play a very positive role in between. And South Korea is the country most knowledgeable about China. 60% of the HS takers are South Koreans in the world. And also we have more than 800 airlines between South Korea and China.
Thank you.
So there is no sea between these two countries. So, we can have positive roles.
Scott,
okay, thank you.
Respond.
Yeah, I didn't get any direct questions,
no,
but I'll just make one comment about the stalemate on six-party talks and the unfortunate truth that because of that stalemate, we also have lost momentum in terms of trying to have a regional multilateral mechanism. And so I see this Northeast Asia Peace and Cooperation Initiative as a potential way for making some progress toward that objective in the interim before North Korea recommits to denuclearization. And I think that China, the US, and South Korea, and others all actually share that same vision in various forms. That's the significance, the original significance of the joint statement. So for that reason, I think that Northeast Asia Peace and Cooperation could be a way of helping all the countries to work together on the bilateral relations that are necessary in order to achieve this, to move forward on this objective of more institutionalized Northeast Asian cooperation.
Thank you. And Yoichi-san?
Yes, I have two questions. One is about NSS, National Security Council, NSC, and the other one is Japan's strategic choice. Very quickly, for the first question, why Japan is contemplating U.S.-type National Security Council. The short answer is because Prime Minister Abe thinks so. And there's no logical reason why it has to be established now, except for that it's under Abe administration, seriously. And to be more in detail explanation, this NSC is a means to improve the strategic interoperability between Japan and the United States. And so it makes sense for Japan to have the similar type of the organization that the United States has. And that's why. And the choice, Japan's strategic choice. Perhaps I was not clear enough in explaining. And when I said that the Japan choice is either enhance the alliance with the United States or to seek the balance trilateral relationship, improving the relationship with China and Korea. I was just talking about ways and means, but the end behind this choice is, as I said, whether Japan tried to maintain the contested U.S. primacy in the region as a basis for our strategy, or Japan shift our strategic goal to multipolar system. And as I said, the answers to the first question was also based on the premise that Japan's strategic thinking is based on the maintenance of U.S. unipolar primacy. And so this strategic choice is also between whether Japan maintain U.S. contested unipolar primacy or Japan move away from that choice but to move toward the multipolar system, which I'm sure China is trying to establish, and so is Russia. And so this is a very critical choice between for Japan to make, and that's why I made that choice. And those two sets of means that I explained represent those two different strategic choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to have the second round of the questions. Okay, go back there.
Thank you. My name is Tao Wang from the Tsinghua Carnegie Center for Global Policy. This is an open question that to all the panelists, whoever wants to pick up. Given the serious smogs in Beijing, Beijing is actually taking a transition to increasing more use of gas instead of coal, and so is the North China. So that means actually China will become a very important player on the international natural gas market. And I think the current situation is Japan is still the #1, and China is #3 after European Union, and also South Korea is also very much dependent on the natural gas import. And our moderator mentioned at the very beginning that there's a Northeast Asia Peace and Cooperation Initiative. I want to know if there are any consideration of energy security in that initiative, or any of the of our panelists aware of any consideration or efforts or initiative among the different countries to improve the energy security in this region. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike over there, gentleman in the third row.
Okay. Just a question to Mr. Kato. Yeah, comment to comment. Yeah, and Japan feels anxiety about China-South Korea deepening relations. Actually, I think it's too much. I don't think China-South Korea could move so further to isolate Japan. I think this is overdue. Yeah. Maybe China, South Korea have a lot of common interests, history issues about Japan, and worry about right wing, swing, yeah, that they want to regain a kind of a self-defense security power, something like that. So on this point, China and South Korea have a lot of common. Of course, Korean Peninsula about North Korea issues. So I don't think China-South Korea could go further to a kind of a strategic relations against U.S. So this is, should be separate. Another issue, you talk about that Japan's anxiety, about that worry about that future of American primacy. But also, for China, we worry about a kind of isolation, that Japan organize more alliance with South, with
comment, please.
Australia, yeah, one point. Australia, India, and the other ASEAN countries on the maritime security issues. So China also will feel some kind of exam. So this is also not a balance. So we have to respond to that kind of question. Yeah.
Thank you. The gentleman.
特别感谢啊，给我这么一个提问的机会。我来自于呢中国外交学院国际关系研究所，我叫周永生。我对刚才呢这个加藤洋一先生，对中国、韩国还有日本唐朝那个时候那场战争的古代历史呢做一下更正。加藤先生呢，他的意思呢就是说，这个当时呢，韩国和日本结成了同盟，那么中国呢去攻打韩国，最后遭到失败。好像是说呢，就是说，中国唐朝强大的时候呢，就去欺负韩国和日本，给人们这样一个印象。实际上呢，当时的历史呢是这样一个情况，也就是说，在现在的韩国地区有2个国家，一个是新罗，一个是百济。那么日本呢，实际上在一定程度上呢控制着百济，百济呢要向日本朝贡，这个而新罗呢和唐朝的关系。而新罗呢和唐朝的关系非常好，那么呢在北部呢，这辽东半岛地区，还有呢，现在朝鲜的北部地区呢，还有一个呢。叫高句丽，这个高句丽呢和后来的高丽王国呢
Please, what's the point? Can you be more specific on your question?
我这个问题呢，就是说不同意加藤洋一先生的观点。他认为呢，当时仅仅是一个韩国，还有呢。一个中国，一个日本的关系，就把历史简单化了。实际上呢，当时朝鲜，还有韩国地区呢是3个国家，那么呢，是新罗呢和唐朝联合起来。
Okay, thank you for clarifying the historical background. Okay, you can have discussion over the lunch. Okay, next, please, because we don't have much time.
好，谢谢。
Thank you.
谢谢。
Thank you. I'm Zhao Kejin from Tsinghua University. And very brief comments for the discussion on the Sino-ROK relations. We talk more about the bilateral relation, but we have a limitation of bilateral relation because we should put the relationship under the structural level. You know, we have some red line. For our relationship, because we have a revival, strategic revival between China and the U.S. So we should pay more attention to the interactive factors which maybe have some influence on bilateral relationship. But you know, we can witness there are 2 negative issues. Of interactive actors for U.S. and North Korea. They are negative issues for our relationship. But we have good news, a positive factors to improve our relationship for Japan. You know, if possible, Japan maybe is a good opportunity for our 2 nations to strengthen the relationship, not only in economic arena, but also in security arena. So, if possible, our colleagues in this panel can talk about the Japan's role in the relationship between China and South Korea.
So we'll be able to talk about that issue tomorrow, and so because actually we don't have much time, I'd like to invite each speakers to speak about 30 seconds. It's a test of capability to deliver your opinion in 30 seconds. Please, Canrong.
Okay. One point about the strategic cooperation relationship between us. We established a couple years ago, and when I strongly oppose that, because I do not see there too much strategic things between our two countries, ROK and China. But now I tend to accept we do have strategic relations in dealing with North Korea, in developing our bilateral relations, and in promoting the rising of Asia, including Northeast Asia. So I think we can have that kind of relationship in next 10, 20 years if we do not have that fully today. Thank you.
Thank you.
As for our China relations, I am quite optimistic. I think that the stability of this bilateral tie should be the pillar of the peace of our region. And then a very brief answer to Professor Renmin's question, whether PLA or other agency be more influential on China's policy towards Japan. I don't know. Nobody knows. You know, that's a black box. Many voices jump in, you know, and it's a result of compromise. Something just like what happened in the U.S. policymaking process. Many factors join in, and nobody can say we dominate this process. That's the reality.
Thank you. Professor Kim?
China is the most fast-growing country and changing so rapidly. So it is extremely difficult to understand. So we have to put much more efforts to understand the China, as well as the Chinese side also has that kind of efforts to understand South Korea. So I can tell my Chinese colleagues, you know, 你中有我，还有我中有你。And then also I can tell you you know, 不要着急，慢慢在一起走吧。好，谢谢你。
Okay, Scott.
Yeah, I just want to make one observation about the China-South Korea relationship, and that is the fact that it is limited by three other relationships: the U.S.-China relationship, inter-Korean relationship, and the China-DPRK relationship. And I think that until those issues become less of an influence on the China-South Korea relationship strategically, this relationship will not be able to live up to its full potential.
5 minutes.
Okay, now?
Just quickly, I did not mean to depict close China-ROK relationship as being anti-America. What I was trying to say is it would have an enormous impact on the strategic shift of the leadership structure in this region. And to respond to a comment by Professor Liu Min, I fully aware that the United States, China is also concerned about the recent strategic development, and that proves the necessity for the strategic dialogue. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Kim.
Between the two countries, we have security issues. Now the KAMD and US-led MD system partly affiliated. It can be another step from Korea, South Korea, US, and Japanese regional collective defense system. We understand China's anxiety of these security issues, but at this point, we have to more keep up with our trust on policy between the two countries in the long terms. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Professor Wang?
So I think the history is really important to all of the countries in this region. I think we need to learn from history correctly. So I think, but we also need to remember history will never happen again. So we need to look forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, finally, we have come to the end of the first session. I think we have covered the bilateral relations, but also the alliance issue, U.S.-China, North Korea very well. So I think that we have much food for thought in the following sessions. So please join me thanking the presenters and discussants.